Kia ora and welcome
Hello.
back to Video Drones. I'm Hannah.
I'm Nick.
And it's Mother's Day here in New Zealand. So it just so happens that we're reviewing a film called
The Lost Daughter.
The Lost Daughter. So that's quite interesting, isn't it? Just sort of turned out that way, but we thought that was quite a cool coincidence. I was actually going to go have a meal with my lovely oldest son, but he called up to say he couldn't because there's COVID in the house again, and he probably has at this time by the sounds of it. So that sucks. When your kids are sick, that's horrible. Especially COVID. So fingers crossed he'll be okay. Poor wee fella. Yeah, so I guess I would talk a little bit about myself as a mother and my thoughts on motherhood, as well as reviewing this film, because this film was great in that it brings up some really interesting aspects of motherhood that aren't really talked about, that are still pretty taboo. But the actual film itself,
Yeah,
went a little bit.
Yeah, the topics are great.
Topic's great, very important, but the execution, not so much.
It was okay. I mean, it was better on second viewing, I think.
I was so bored. I was so bored. I was like, when is this going to be over?
Definitely pretty average, though.
It's not. So it's Maggie Gyllenhaal's debut feature. I've seen plenty of debut features that are just like,
She's made one short prior to this.
One short. But there's I mean, there's plenty of directors that have made their first films and they're freaking remarkable, and you're like, how is this their first film? Maggie's still got a long way to go. I don't know if she's really got the chops for direction.
I think she'll get better. Yeah.
I don't know.
And I'm pretty
not
confident
convinced.
in her. I mean, speaking of first-time directors, we watched a film called Wanda, which was a first-time director.
And when
Barbara
was that
Loden,
made?
1969 it would have been shot in.
Yeah, so 69, yeah.
Very important feminist film. Barbara Loden is the director, and actually I was watching a Criterion Closet video with Maggie Gyllenhaal's husband, Peter Sarsgaard, and he's great. He's in the film as well. He's very briefly, but he mentioned that Wanda was a film that was very important to Maggie Gyllenhaal when she was filming The Deuce. So she's obviously watched it and kind of taken it on board, and you can kind of see its influence in this film, I think.
Yes, but I found that much more compelling. I mean, very little sort of happens in the film. It's also a very slow kind of film, but I just thought it was way more compelling and interesting. But you've got the contrast here. So in Wanda, she's very poor, she's not educated at all, and she's just kind of got this like lost sort of hopelessness about her, whereas
Quite a different character.
Very different from this. So in The Lost Daughter, we've got someone who's very highly educated, that seems to be fairly comfortable, pretty competent in other ways, but is more just a selfish, sort of sullen person who resents her children. In Wanda, it's quite interesting. At the very beginning of the film, she's basically saying that she doesn't think she's a good parent, and that instead of, you see a lot of mothers will fight to have their children. She just says, well, I think they'll be better off with their dad. She doesn't seem like a very competent person. She's just sort of given up. Whereas,
it's quite a bleak film.
It is.
She doesn't say much. It's quite an empty film in a lot of ways, but it's a very very complex character study.
It's a very interesting and way ahead of its time, and addresses some really interesting issues there.
She was thought of, sorry to interrupt, she was thought of as the female Cassavetes, John Cassavetes as well.
Oh, that makes sense.
Which is, I mean, the very kind of raw camera work, wild camera as it was called in John Cassavetes cinema. But I wish she'd made some more films. She died about 10 years after it was made, and she had other projects kind of ready that she'd written but never got off the ground. I think she was a bit overshadowed by her husband, Arthur Miller, the playwright, who was very famous.
Very famous. And she also acted in Wanda. She directed it, wrote it, and starred in it. Really interesting film. And the fact that it was in sort of 69.
I know, and there weren't very many female directors around at that time, like there are. I mean, there aren't heaps now either, but there are a lot more than there were then. But there are some other influences that I saw in the film as well. Claire Denis, she's a French director.
High Life, I highly rate High Life. That movie is wild. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Big thumbs up for me on that one.
We're definitely going to be watching some more of her films. High Life's quite different because it's sort of more of a sci-fi film. She does do a few genre films, like Trouble Every Day is sort of a vampire film, so we'll probably have to watch that soon.
Oh, we should. We like our vampire films.
But her films are usually a bit more like The Lost Daughter, and I think the camera work, I mean, the cinematographer that Maggie Gyllenhaal got to shoot the film is French, and she's a female cinematographer, and it kind of looks a bit like Claire Denis films, but not quite as good.
I wasn't a fan of the cinematography. Really support women cinematographers, absolutely, but
she's obviously
wasn't good.
A good cinematographer, but it's kind of that purposely loose style, like handheld, not like as raw as Lars von Trier's film cinematography, but yeah, I mean,
there was all these beautiful places that they were going. It was gorgeous sort of scenery, and it really was just sort of, you had to dig to look at it. It was weird. Just the focus she was making, the sort of shot she decided to take, it just didn't do anything for me. The editing was fine and nothing special. And Olivia Colman, I love Olivia Colman. In fact, the first time I sort of saw Olivia Colman, she was in this absurdist British series called The Green Mile or Green.
Okay.
It's about a hospital. Yeah, about a hospital. There's all these weird characters, and she's sort of this total like overworked, overwrought, just kind of mother. She forgets to drop off her kids. She's all over the place. She's just completely sort of, there's the worst kind of brain fog, and she is so endearing, and it just sort of steals every scene. It's a very, very good cast.
Sounds good.
She's fantastic. I really liked her portrayal of Queen Anne in The Favourite. That was bonkers. She is an incredible actor, but in this,
she was a bit irritating in the Crown, but I know she's supposed to be. But she's playing Queen.
I haven't seen that.
Irritating
actually.
As well.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just not a royalist. So.
No, we're not royalists. If you can't tell. Yeah.
But yeah, and there's another film called Tyrannosaur, which I keep meaning to watch, which is supposed to be amazing, and it's not about dinosaurs or anything.
Oh, damn it! I've got my Tyrannosaur earrings.
It's one of those very real, almost like Snowtown, kind of bleak films about a guy who's maybe gotten out of prison, who's a bit mentally ill, and kind of gets together with Olivia Colman, and she plays a very different kind of character in it. But I keep putting it off because it looks so bleak.
Yeah, she's a great actress. But I don't know. I just felt like she wasn't really acting. She was just kind of shuffling around. I don't know.
She was acting. I mean, there's a lot of crying and stuff in it, which is not easy to do. Well, as an actor, I don't really know, but I can't imagine that it's easy to cry on demand.
No, I think it was more of a lack of direction. I'm not sure. I didn't really enjoy her performance very much. I just didn't enjoy the character. I didn't like any of the characters. No, even Ed Harris.
Good cast though.
I mean, Ed Harris. Come on, he's just so forgettable and underutilized, and it's just kind of this sort of.
I think he's sort of supposed to be a bit. Not forgettable, but
hopeless?
He's hopeless. He's supposed to be a character that she's not interested in. She's only kind of spending time with him when she's bored, I think. And
I said Peter Skarsgård, he really stole the whole movie for me. He's very, very briefly in it, but he's just electric.
Very flamboyant, kind of literary professor. Quite annoying as well in some ways. Like he's supposed to be a bit wanky, I think, but and Dakota Johnson was in it, playing a really trashy character, which is very different. I guess she was in 50 Shades of Grey, but she wasn't kind of as trashy in that as she is. And that's like her, her makeup and the clothes that she wears are intentionally.
I think they're supposed to be a family from sort of Queens.
Yeah, they're supposed to sort of show a class division between the Olivia Colman character. Really. And maybe the family's mistrust of her as well, but she's sort of on another level.
The story basically goes as Olivia Colman is an academic. She works with languages. She ends up she's on holiday. And, there's a lot of symbolism in the film that's pretty clear. There's a beautiful bowl of fruit there on the table when she first gets there, but after a day or so, she sort of picks up the fruit and underneath it's all rotten. So I think that's a really good analogy for, like, she looks fine on the outside. Everything in her life seems fine from the beginning of the film, but really there's this intense sort of rot inside of her. I don't know if it's because she's not a great person or because the guilt of things that she's done in her life are kind of eating away at her. But I think it's, it's a really good analogy. She looks fine on the outside, but she's sort of rotting. There's this overwhelming kind of insidious thing underneath everything that's going on. It sort of shows that her holiday is about to kind of, it's going to go in a pretty darkish place. And there's another very strong symbolism with this orange being peeled. She likes to try and peel it properly, and her children she has these flashbacks of her daughters who are sort of like, can you peel it all
like a snake
into one piece, and there are these happy memories that she has with her children.
Well, not many.
The orange one always.
That is, yeah.
She's always kind of the oranges, the happy ones. But it's so weird. There's flashbacks with her children, and one of her daughters is, "Please kiss my finger better," because children want you to kiss.
Yeah, she doesn't.
And she just doesn't. It's like she's not even trying.
Hard.
She's like, it's really not that hard. There's this really odd attitude she has to her children. It's cruel. And in this respect, sort of some of the choices she makes, I think it is maybe in the better interest of the daughters that she did what she did. Also, she's not, she's
an unlikable character, but I think that's sort of the point, because, humans aren't good or bad. They're a combination of a lot of things. And, I mean, okay, so the film is based on the book, The Lost Daughter, written by Elena Ferrante, who I'm just kind of getting into at the moment.
That she has a way with words. The more I found out about her, the more I was like, actually, her book does sound fantastic. She really kind of captures the tedious, dark, kind of like animalistic aspects of being a parent, of breastfeeding, in the most beautiful and compelling way. And I didn't see any of that in the film. Did you have a passage that she wrote?
Yeah. Here's a passage. So I haven't read her novels yet, but I've read a lot about her, especially by this writer James Wood. And so this, I really want to read The Days of Abandonment, which is her first novel, maybe her second novel. Sounds really interesting, and I just get the feeling that her writing is a lot more kind of raw and wild than the film was, which is sort of a bit watery or something. But anyway, here's something from The Days of Abandonment. Is it a mother talking about her attitude towards her kids? I was like a lump of food that my children chewed without stopping, a cud made of living material that continually amalgamated and softened its living substance to allow two greedy bloodsuckers to nourish themselves, leaving me on the odour and taste of their gastric juices, nursing how repulsive an animal function. So, I mean, the language is kind of beautifully grotesque and very honest. I mean, I think that's the thing that's that people really respond to about her writing, is how honest it is, shockingly honest.
It's also interesting that she refuses to let it be known who she is. She uses a pseudonym. And isn't that interesting that someone who writes very honestly about the mothering experience is so scared of backlash that she has to be anonymous? That is an interesting
I don't think it's scared. I think she just doesn't want all the fame that's she doesn't want to have to deal with the interviews. That other book that I just showed before, that's a collection of interviews that she's done with her fans who have emailed her stuff. She does lots of interviews. Not lots, but she does some interviews, that have been emailed to her, and that's the vibe that I get.
I still think women who write so rawly about motherhood become very afraid of the the sort of public reaction that they're going to get. It is a very difficult topic to talk about, and also as a parent, you don't really want to let your kids know that you're the one maybe saying these sorts of things I'm very, very interested in the subject matter of this film. I think the subject matter seems very, very good. And so it's sad that it was so kind of poorly mishandled, or just not really brought to where it could have gone.
Before I forget, when we were talking about influences, there's another director who we've watched a little bit of. I've seen most of her films in the past, Chantal Akerman. We watched that film, Tout de Nuit, I think it's it.
Oh, wow, she's amazing.
She deals with motherhood in her films, and the film Jean Dielman is kind of, it's very slow. It's like a 3.5 hour film with this woman played by Delphine Seyrig, if that's how you say it. I don't really know how to say it. But it's very slow moving, and there's not, actually, I won't spoil the ending because it's a pretty important ending, but there's not much action until the ending. It's just sort of her preparing. It's like sort of how mundane everyday life is.
Running errands, cooking, cleaning, looking after people, having meals. I love seeing that on a film. Like, we don't see the mundane realities of people's sort of domestic lives, but I find that really interesting.
So I'm sure, I mean, that's another really important feminist film, and I think it would be weird if Maggie Gyllenhaal hadn't seen that, and that was some kind of influence.
So I mean, we're definitely suggesting, like, read the book. I recommend the book over the movie. I mean, even though I haven't read it, I'm already so fascinated by it. I'd say Wanda and anything by Chantal is just so
I mean, her films are quite different, but that one in particular, I'd say, is pretty important.
They're so wow. I was really blown away. Like, there's very little sort of happening, but it's so compelling. It's so, her way of storytelling is just brilliant, and I've never seen anything like it. I was really, really blown away by her work. Yeah. I suppose with the whole parenting thing, like, it's quite interesting because I think a lot of people go into being a parent thinking that for themselves, they don't realize, I don't know if it's because people don't talk honestly about what it's like to have children, or people are kind of just dreaming, but when you have children, you have to be selfless. It's not about you anymore. It's not going to be like that forever. They'll get to a certain age usually where, they're more independent, but that's just the reality of having children. If you're going in blind, if you think that having a child, that they'll look after you, or you want to get something out of having them, if it's because of selfish reasons, it's going to suck, and it's going to be really, really unfair to your children. I mean, I was very young when I had children, and I never thought that I was never maternal. I didn't think I was like, how am I going to handle this? But I never, even though I don't think I was the ideal mother, I was always definitely trying my hardest, and was very anxious about making sure that, like, I was doing everything I could. And when I did things wrong, I felt really guilty. I'm frustrated that I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until my children were basically teenagers, because I think that would have dramatically helped me be the sort of mother I wanted to be. But I never once resented my children or was deliberately cruel to my children. And I think if you are the sort of person that's going to be like that, maybe you shouldn't be in your children's lives. And I think it's weird that there's a stigma that men can kind of go, but women can't. I think if you're going to be a shit parent, no matter if you're a woman or a man, like, you shouldn't stay in your children's lives. That's probably quite a controversial thing to say, but I just don't see the point of being around children that you're going to kind of neglect or be cruel to, or just not be available to. Like, what is the point of even being there? You might as well go live your life. And I don't think there should be so much of a taboo about mothers that do that. I couldn't possibly think for a second about doing that. I was very devoted to my children, even though I really struggled. It's hard work, and when they're little, it can be very tedious. It's not exactly the most fun thing in the world, especially if you want to be more academically inclined, if you want to pursue other interests. But at the same time, I don't think parents should completely devote themselves to their children and make their children their whole lives. I certainly I was very, very careful to make sure I still had my music and my writing and my friends, and I'd go to gigs, I'd go to poetry things, like.
And you're still in the band with them now.
And now I'm in a band with them. It's like, I think it's so, so, so important as a mother not to disappear into your children. I think that's also putting a huge burden on your children, because you roll your life around your children. Your children are going to feel kind of responsible for, like, being your whole life. So definitely don't think that people should blindly just full-on parent, and that's everything. That's totally unbalanced. So having that balance of, like, being everything you can for your children, but also being your own self and pursuing your own interests, and not sort of hovering over them, watching every little thing and fussing away. I just don't think that's not, to me, very good parenting. I know some people seem to think that fussing over your kids and being like a helicopter is good parenting. I disagree. You've got to, like, let your children be themselves to some degree. Yeah, back off. Let your kids be kids. Let them climb things and fall over and learn stuff, and don't, like, hover over them. Oh my god, you poor little thing. I was just sort of, if my kids clonk themselves, and sort of pick them up and say, like, oh, whoops a daisy, and just kind of move on. Otherwise you get these kids that are like, their parents get so upset about every little knock that they become very fearful. So, but yeah, I do think I have actually met someone, and it's funny, there are lots of men that aren't present in their children's lives, but I've only met one person that actually walked away from her child. is someone that I knew that lived with us briefly. And she didn't feel guilty about her choice at all. She was like, domesticity isn't for me, parenting isn't for me. And yeah, she was quite, I thought that was quite, I was like, wow, it's quite good on you. If you knew that you weren't going to be able to be a good parent in that situation, if that just wasn't how you could live, and her partner was a much more attentive parent, she just decided not to do that. And I think she got a lot of judgment for that, but to me it made quite a lot of sense. It's just strange that I've only even met one person. But yeah, she wasn't sullen and feeling sorry for herself or feeling guilty. I think if you are going to make a choice to walk away, yeah, don't sort of like let it rot away inside of you. And the guilt that this character and the lost mother is feeling was just not healthy for anyone. But parents will generally feel guilt. I'm certainly guilty of feeling guilty about all sorts of things. So it's not like it's the easiest thing to do, but the things that you do, you've got to just be like, well, that's happened. I think one of the things that she really was like crossing a line for me is the fact that it was like this cruelty to her children, but also she never apologized to her children. And that's another thing that
we didn't see that in the movie.
Yeah, we didn't see her ever kind of apologize for being cruel or saying I made a mistake. And I think once again, it's one of those things that I don't believe that you should hold yourself on this impossible pedestal. I think if you fuck up as a parent, you should admit it and say, I'm sorry about that. And it doesn't mean your children aren't going to respect you. It's weird how some parents want to make themselves into gods that can do no wrong, because that's going to backfire at some stage eventually. Because everyone's humanly flawed. We're not going to be able to be perfect. So yeah, good topics to bring up. Yeah.
I was just going to say one other thing that I forgot was that Maggie Gyllenhaal was a huge fan of Elena Ferrante, and she actually spent 2 weeks writing a letter to her, which she showed to all of her friends to try and get sort of advice before she sent it. And I think she wrote with the intention of directing it, but was probably open to someone else directing it or something, because she said that that when Elena Ferrante replied, she said that you can do the film, but you can only do it if you direct. You have to direct it yourself. And she felt a lot of pressure, I think, to kind of make it good.
Because she's a very creative and talented, accomplished woman and actress. Very, very cool human, Maggie. But maybe that makes a little sense. Maybe it was just a little bit sort of too much for her, really.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I liked it more the second time, and I probably liked it more than you do. But I definitely think she'll grow as a director.
Oh, I think. What did she say? She said that basically. So Maggie Gyllenhaal said that, can you be brave enough to ask yourself the ways that you relate to her? So that's an interesting thing. So I'm pretty self-aware, so maybe I'm not the target audience for this kind of thing. But if this film is forcing some people to be aware of things that they were hiding from themselves, well, that's great. And if that was her intention, awesome. And I hope that does happen to people. But yeah, I'm pretty self-aware. Like, I can't stop thinking about things that I've done and why they've done them. I think a lot of, and also the writer of the book, she sort of mentioned that, like, some of us really don't know why we do things, and there's that mystery of why do we do things, and there's no answer. But I generally know why I do things. I can usually find a cause. But I mean, for exploring all those issues, especially for people who aren't as introspective, yeah, I think it would be a really good film to go in with that sort of openness to, like, what am I afraid of? What can I see of myself in here? And yeah, just kind of be more open to exploring some of the more taboo aspects of being a parent. And I'm glad that a film like this was made, even though it wasn't my cup of tea.
No, it's important. No, there's another. She's written quite a few novels, especially a novel called The Neapolitan trilogy. There's 4 of them, quadrilogy or something like that, and they've been turned into a miniseries. Not a miniseries, a proper TV series, which I really want to watch.
I really hope that the directors can actually bring some of her writing and her passion and her kind of creepy, she's got this creepy, almost body horror vibe to the screen.
Yeah, the first 2 novels definitely are a bit more kind of angry, I think.
Yeah, I like
it sounds
that.
like she's chilled out a bit.
Oh, damn it.
Well, not completely. She's still, like, very honest in her writing, from what I've heard.
But I love honest raw writing, especially around more taboo subjects. I really, really respect that. And kind of like, it can be quite grotesque to give birth and to breastfeed and to change nappies.
I bet it can be.
Certainly not the most glamorous thing on the planet. So, yeah, but it's all part of motherhood. I just wish people talked about it more and knew what they were getting in for. And it's like sometimes if you bring it up, people don't really want to hear. But who knows?
So what would you rate it?
Oh, really? Yeah. I'm glad that I think it's an important film to be made. I love Olivia Colman. I didn't really like anything about it rather than what it was talking about. So I'd probably give it 1 heart.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, it's just not. No.
I mean, I definitely think it's important. An important film. I'd probably would have given it like 2.5 or 3. But if you're giving it a 1, geez. So it'll end up being out of 10. I think I need to give it a 5 or something.
No, you can't do
I'll
that.
give it a 4. I'll give it a 4.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll give it nothing then. Okay, no, I suppose
I think it deserves at least a 5 or 6 out of 10.
I just think that there's other films that have done it way better, and I think she let the subject matter down. And yeah, I still think it just, I hated watching it twice. I was like, really? Yeah, so I guess we're giving it 5 hearts?
Yeah, 5 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah, so let us know in the comments if you watched it and enjoyed it. Whether it made you think about parenthood or your mother, or whether you want to be a parent or your own parenting experience.
And we'll see you next week for our review of X.
Yeah, we're going to do X.
We won't give you away what we think of it.
No, but lots of people have been talking about that, so we're like, okay, we better watch it. So we did. So we'll do that next week.
See you later.
See ya, bye.